This is a show where we take a whole stack of practical material, we filter out all the noise, and we give you just the high-impact knowledge you need to feel instantly well-informed.
And today we have a phenomenal topic.
We really do. Our mission today is super focused. It's on one of the most important parts of social success, mastering the language of hospitality.
It's so much more than just vocabulary, isn't it? We're really teaching social choreography. You know, our listener, the learner, they're looking for knowledge they can actually apply. The kind of essential English phrases that, bridge that gap between just talking and actually connecting.
Exactly, connecting. And we've sourced material that lays out the perfect script for a dinner party. It's a classic scenario, right? One that really demands confidence and warmth.
And the goal is to provide that full toolkit, from the moment the doorbell rings to the final goodbye.
That confidence part is it's everything. I mean, if you're getting ready to host friends or maybe colleagues, even people you just met, you need more than just the basics.
Oh, for sure. You need linguistic power tools that make your guests feel comfortable and valued and welcome, from the get-go.
And that's what we're doing. We're diving deep into the psychology of why some phrases work so much better than others. It's about turning you from just a functional host into someone who's, a truly fluent master of the house.
Social fluency. I like that.
That's exactly it. Because knowledge is only really valuable when you understand it and then you apply it. And in this setting, the application is immediate. You want every single phrase you say to create this seamless, relaxed atmosphere.
And we're going to get into the little details, the tiny differences in word choice.
We are. Sometimes it's just one little preposition or a different verb that completely changes whether you sound like you're just being polite or you're genuinely, enthusiastically welcoming. Okay, let's unpack this. We are going phrase by phrase through the perfect party script, and we're starting right at the very beginning. The doorbell rings, your guest has arrived.
Yeah.
That moment of arrival it's paramount. Ding dong. That first interaction, it just sets the entire tone for the whole evening.
It really does. If those first, say, 30 seconds are awkward or stiff, it can take an hour to get the vibe back on track.
It's so true. And our sources all stress that before you even say a word, there's one critical, nonverbal signal that is absolutely mandatory.
A sincere, visible smile.
Yes.
It sounds so obvious, doesn't it? But you have to look genuinely happy to see them. That nonverbal warmth, that's your foundation.
Right.
But once you've got that foundation, you immediately face the first verbal test. And this is where a lot of hosts, especially if they're, concentrating on speaking English correctly, they might default to something pretty simple.
Which is, of course, just hi.
And to be honest, hi is just not enough.
It's not enough.
No. It's too low information. It's transactional. Think of hi as a quick head nod. It just acknowledges they're there, but it doesn't communicate any joy, any anticipation.
Okay, so let's contrast that. What's the high impact version?
The phrase that our source material suggests is the gold standard is, I am so glad you could come.
I am so glad you could come.
That phrase, it just carries so much emotional weight. You're instantly telling the guest two things. First, that you were actually thinking about them before they arrived. And second, that them being there is actively making your evening better.
So it elevates them. They're not just an attendee, they're an honored guest.
Precisely. It makes them feel special and wanted. It completely changes the social equation. Hello starts the conversation at 0. I'm so glad you could come. Starts it with a shared positive feeling.
Okay, but let me challenge that a little bit. What if I say that to every single person who walks through the door? Doesn't it start to sound a bit rehearsed?
Yeah.
If I'm hosting a big party and the 20th person arrives.
That's a really sharp point. And you can and should vary it slightly based on how close you are to the person.
Yeah.
For your really close friends, you can use language that's even more personal. The alternative phrase we noted is, it is so good to see you.
Right. That feels warmer for a friend I haven't seen in a while.
Exactly. It's perfect for those inner circle people. It implies you have a history, a deeper connection. It feels very personal.
So we have the smile, we have the warm, tailored greeting, but now there's a practical problem. The guest is still standing in the doorway.
Yes, the threshold moment.
They're kind of awkwardly standing there, maybe holding a coat, and they're not quite in, but they're not quite out. We need to give them a little linguistic nudge, right, to get them into the house.
We do, and we have to avoid being stiff. The simplest, most functional thing to say is, please come in. It's polite, it's correct, but it still sounds a little formal, a little transactional.
And for a casual party, like a dinner party with friends, formality is kind of the enemy of comfort.
Absolutely. So our sources overwhelmingly recommend a really subtle but powerful change to create that immediate ease. And that is, come on in.
Come on in. That little word, on. It's
Yeah.
amazing how much it softens the command. It's not directive anymore. It's
Yeah.
welcoming.
It truly is. Adding on signals ease and relaxation. It gets rid of that awkward lingering in the doorway and encourages them to just cross the threshold immediately. It sends a message, this is a relaxed space, you can move, you can settle in.
I want to dig into the linguistic side of that for a second.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm not hosting friends. What if I'm meeting, I don't know, a senior business colleague or my partner's very traditional grandparents for the first time?
Yeah.
Is come on in suddenly the wrong choice?
That's where context is king, for sure. If the situation is highly formal, like a business meeting, you'd stick with the cleaner, more reserved, please come in. You'd say it with a warm tone, but you'd avoid the casual phrasing. But for friends, neighbors, anyone you want to feel relaxed with, come on in is your instant ticket to a casual vibe. It's a really powerful distinction for any learner to grasp. These subtle shifts in English can completely change the level of formality.
So it's about matching the linguistic choreography to the social vibe. Okay, so they're inside. Now we move straight into the first act of actual, tangible service.
Yes. The host's duty immediately turns to managing the guest stuff, especially if you live somewhere cold. Guests show up with coats, scarves, bags, maybe a bottle of wine. If they're juggling all that, they can't relax. The host has to solve that problem for them, and proactively.
Right, you can't just wait for them to throw their wet coat over the back of a nice chair.
Exactly not. So we need language that is polite, but also assertive enough to take charge.
What do we got?
Well, there are two key, very polite ways to ask about the coat. The first one is super traditional, very polite, using the modal verb may. May I take your coat?
That's very respectful. You're asking for permission to handle their property.
It is. The second option, which I think sounds a little more confident and proactive, uses the verb let. Let me take your coat for you.
I like that one. Let's break that down. May I take is asking if it's okay. Let me take is more like, I am ready and willing to do this for you. Just allow me. It shows more readiness.
It conveys so much more confidence. It frames it not as a question, but as an offer of service that the guest should just gracefully accept. And that's a core part of hospitality. The host has to be willing to take on the guest's small burdens.
And the sources really emphasize that what you do next matters just as much as what you say.
Oh, absolutely. The follow-through is critical. You can't just take their expensive coat and, toss it on a bed in a pile.
Yet,
That detail shows deep respect. If you use this great language to offer to take their coat, you have to treat it with care. Hang it up properly in a closet or on a coat rack. That small act shows you respect them and their belongings, and it continues that theme of genuine welcome you started at the door.
okay, now let's get to the really challenging part. The culturally loaded practical issue of shoes.
Ah, yes. The shoe question.
This is a huge one for international guests because the rules are just so different everywhere. You go to one house, shoes on is fine. The next house, it's a major offense. A learner needs to know how to handle this without being offensive or getting embarrassed.
You're absolutely right. And if the host does have a firm no shoes rule, the language has to be extremely gentle, non-judgmental. You can't sound angry or like you're policing them. Politeness has to be the top priority.
So how do you enforce a rule while still making them feel comfortable?
You use the softest request phrasing we have in English. It involves the conditional and the verb mind. You say, would you mind taking off your shoes?
Would you mind? That really is the gold standard for a soft request, isn't it? Because you're essentially asking them for a small favor, not giving them an order.
Exactly. It acknowledges that it's a personal thing, taking off your shoes. It respects their autonomy. Now there's another way to do it, which can be even smoother. And that's to depersonalize the rule completely.
You mean by explaining it as just what you do in this house?
Yes. You frame it as your normal house custom, not as a criticism of their shoes. You can say something like, we usually leave our shoes by the door.
That's brilliant social choreography. I love that. Because it means the guest feels like they're just adapting to the local custom of this one house, rather than feeling like they've been singled out for having dirty shoes.
It just removes all the potential embarrassment, and it also creates a space for them to respond. I mean, what if they're wearing complicated boots or have a foot injury?
Good point.
If you're gentle, they can say, oh, actually, I have a foot brace. Is it okay if I keep them on? And a kind host will immediately say, of course, please don't worry about it.
Which shows that the real #1 rule isn't about the shoes. The #1 rule is guest comfort.
That's it. And if you want to be a next-level host, especially in a cold place, you can offer a comfort solution right away.
You mean like offering slippers?
Exactly. Or even just clean socks. You could say, we usually leave our shoes here, but please feel free to grab a pair of slippers if you'd like. They're right there. It transforms the rule from a restriction into an offer of even more comfort.
So the big takeaway is that the language of household rules has to be delivered clearly, but also really respectfully.
For sure. And on the flip side, if you're a host who genuinely doesn't care about shoes, you have to make that clear too, to remove their uncertainty. Just say, oh, you can leave your shoes on, don't worry about it. That last part, don't worry, is the key. It gives them permission to relax.
Excellent. Okay, so the guest is inside, they're settled, their coat is hung up, the shoe situation is handled. We're now ready to tackle their internal needs. Okay, now we have to talk about sustenance. I know this whole deep dive is framed around a pizza party, but the pizza comes way later. The first, most immediate need after someone arrives is always a drink.
Always. A drink acts as a kind of anchor. It gives the guests something to hold, something to do with their hands. It lets them focus on a small task while they get used to the room, the people, the music.
That anchor is so crucial. And the offer needs to be broad and right away. We want to avoid questions that can just be answered with a yes or no.
Right. So you start with an open question. The best one is, can I get you something to drink?
Perfect. That's the ideal starting point. It makes the guest think about what they actually want.
It does. But what if the guest is shy or just overwhelmed? That open question can sometimes feel like too much work. They might just say, oh, whatever you have is fine, which then forces the host to start guessing.
So the expert host then provides some options, some scaffolding for their decision.
Exactly. You can move from the open question to listing some clear choices. You can list categories like, can I get you some water or juice or soda? Or depending on the vibe, are you in the mood for a glass of wine or would you prefer a cup of tea? Listing options just makes it easier for them and it shows you're prepared.
I love that. Moving from a broad invitation to helpful guidance. Now let's get real. The host is usually multitasking, right? You're in the kitchen, you're answering the door, you're dealing with something else. You can't always stop and personally make every single drink.
And that's when we introduce self-service. But we have to use language that empowers them, not language that dismisses them.
And the key phrase here, which is just so central to English hospitality, is what?
Please help yourself to a drink.
Please help yourself. It's such a simple little idiom, but when you break it down, it really means take control of your own comfort.
It's one of the most powerful phrases in social English, I think. It's an act of empowerment. It's an act of trust. When a host says, help yourself, they're not just saying, go get it. They're saying, I trust you. I trust you to open my fridge, to look in my cabinets. This space is, for now, your space, too.
It makes the guest feel completely comfortable. It elevates their status in the home.
It really does. Now, we should probably clarify what help yourself applies to. Does it mean I can just start rummaging through their pantry for snacks?
Probably not.
Probably not. Generally, in this context, it applies to what's obviously been offered. The drinks you've laid out, or the fridge if you point to it. A good host would be specific if they mean more, like, and feel free to grab some chips too, they're right there. Specificity is kindness.
Okay, drink secured. They are officially settled. But there is one more unspoken, kind of sensitive guest need.
The bathroom.
The bathroom. Guests are often really shy about asking where the toilet is. They don't want to interrupt, so they wait until they're desperate, which is just uncomfortable.
So the smart host anticipates this anxiety. The move here is the preemptive mini tour.
And how do you offer that without it being weird?
After they have their drink, you just casually say, hey, let me show you around quickly so you know where everything is.
And then you give them really clear, simple directions.
Crystal clear. No vague pointing. You want to reduce their anxiety about searching later. You can just point and say, the kitchen's here, obviously, and the bathroom is just down the hall on the left. That specificity, down the hall on the left, is a gift. It stops them from accidentally opening a bedroom door later.
That kind of attention to detail is really the difference between a good host and a great host. So now let's move to the social dynamic. This can be the hardest part of hosting, especially if you're mixing different groups of friends, your work friends, your gym friends. The host has to become the introducer.
This is social engineering. If you just leave strangers to awkwardly stand near each other, the energy in the room dies. You have to facilitate that first connection.
Okay, so how do we do it?
For a casual party like our pizza party, the best, most conversational way to start is, Tom, have you met Sarah?
Simple enough.
If they say no, the next step is crucial. You give them context. Sarah, this is Tom. He's my neighbor. Or, Tom, this is Sarah, we work together.
But, as we found in our sources, the introduction isn't really complete until you do the third and most fascinating step.
Which is providing the conversation starter.
The secret sauce.
It is. Just introducing two names puts the burden on them to find something to talk about. A great host uses what they know about both people to instantly build a bridge between them.
So give us an example. How do you do that smoothly?
You connect them based on anything they have in common, a hobby, a plan, anything. If you know Tom and Sarah both love tennis, you say, Tom, Sarah also plays tennis. Or, using our party theme, Sarah, Tom thinks he's a pizza expert, so you can ask him if my dough is any good. You're basically handing them a topic on a silver platter.
The genius of that is twofold. First, it kills the awkward silence and gets the conversation going immediately.
Right.
And second, once they're talking, the host is free. You can step away, check on other guests, go check on the food. You've successfully delegated the job of conversation.
It's the ultimate display of linguistic choreography. You're actively engineering a good time and making sure everyone feels included. That's what social fluency in English is all about.
We've now made sure the guest is physically comfortable, coat's gone, they have a drink, they've been introduced. Now we have to shift our focus to the overall atmosphere, the psychological comfort of the room.
Yes, the vibe, the music, the lighting, the temperature, all of it. And the entire goal here can really be summed up in one single, incredibly high-impact phrase.
Which is the absolute peak of English hospitality.
Please make yourself at home.
We have to spend a minute really dissecting this phrase.
Yeah.
It's just 5 simple words, but it communicates an entire philosophy. What are you actually giving the guest when you say that?
You are transferring temporary psychological ownership of the space. That's what you're doing. You're saying the normal rules of being a formal guest are now suspended. It grants them specific permissions.
Like permission to sit on the comfy sofa instead of the stiff chair.
Exactly. Permission to shift your posture, to move around the room without asking. Permission to ask for something you need without feeling like you're being a bother. It eliminates the need for all those polite little micro requests.
So the guest doesn't have to keep asking, is it okay if I sit here?
Right. They're granted immediate permission to relax. It removes the pressure of being overly polite and just lets them be themselves. It's the best way to signal maximum comfort.
But a big part of making someone feel at home is making sure the actual physical environment is comfortable for them. Sometimes a room is too hot, or the music is way too loud for a conversation.
A truly attentive host will use specific language to check on that. We can call them ambiance check phrases.
Okay, give us some of those.
Well, for temperature, you could ask, are you warm enough, or should I turn the heating down? Or, is it a bit drafty over here? For the noise level, is the music too loud? I can easily turn it down.
I notice in those questions you're offering the solution right away.
Yes, and that's key. By offering the fix within the question, you show you're ready and willing to change things, which makes it much easier for a guest to admit they're a little uncomfortable.
Those are excellent. Okay, so you've invited them to make themselves at home, but they still might need a little nudge to actually get settled. We need to direct them to a seat without sounding like a drill sergeant.
And this is where we have to contrast the language of invitation with the language of command. The command, which we always avoid, is the simple, blunt, sit down.
Which, yeah, is only really okay if the house is on fire or something.
Exactly. The language of invitation is so much better. You use a phrase like, please have a seat in the living room.
Or a slightly more casual version like, why don't you take a seat over there?
Both are perfect.
Yeah.
Have a seat or take a seat are polite, standard invitations. They're offerings, not orders. They maintain that relaxed atmosphere you've worked to create.
This whole sequence is just fantastic. For the learner who is really absorbing these specific English phrases, let's do a quick, smooth recap. Let's run through the whole sequence from start to finish.
Good idea. Let's run the complete script.
Okay. The doorbell rings. Action. Open the door with a big smile. Phrase, I am so glad you could come. Come on in. This sets the tone of warmth and ease.
Next, action. Deal with their stuff right away. Phrase, let me take your coat for you. The signal service and it frees up their hands.
Then action. Get them a drink. Phrase, can I get you something to drink? Or if you're busy, you empower them. Please help yourself to a drink.
Action. Prevent future awkwardness. Phrase, let me show you around. The bathroom is just down the hall on the left.
Action. Social integration. Phrase, Tom, have you met Sarah? Sarah loves pizza too. You give them a topic.
And finally, action. Set the overall vibe of total comfort. Phrase, please make yourself at home. And then you guide them gently. Why don't you have a seat in the living room?
That is a complete polished sequence. We've moved from just knowing vocabulary to actually understanding linguistic choreography. Every single interaction is intentional and warm. The confidence you get from knowing the script is huge.
And it brings us back to the core idea. This linguistic framework just enhances your own natural warmth. If you're kind and attentive, the words just feel right. You've planned for every little moment of potential awkwardness, which lets your friends just relax and enjoy your company, and eventually your pizza.
It's all about eliminating the friction. That really is the key to social fluency in English.
Yeah.
So just as that first welcome sets the tone, the farewell really seals the memory of the evening.
We need a good goodbye, especially if a party has gone on a bit late and you need to gently transition people out.
The farewell process needs just as much care as the arrival. You have to maintain that tone of hospitality right up until the very last second.
Yeah.
The physical actions are key here. You walk them to the door, you get their coat for them. You don't just point to the closet.
It's the final act of service. You're closing out your duties as the host. Exactly. And once they have their things, the farewell phrases fall into 3 key categories. You need gratitude, you need reciprocity, and you need caring. That gives you a complete social and emotional closure.
Okay, let's start with gratitude.
This one's simple, sincere, and direct. You look them in the eye and you say, "Thank you so much for coming."
But that's not quite enough, is it? You also need reciprocity.
Right. Reciprocity confirms that the experience was good for you too. You're not just glad they showed up, you're glad for the time you spent with them.
So what's the key phrase for that?
Something like, "I had a really great time tonight," or "It was so wonderful to catch up with you." This confirms that their presence was valued, that the evening was a success for you. It makes them feel good about coming.
Okay, now let's tackle the really tricky part. What if the party is just dragging on? How do you signal it's time to wrap up without actually saying, "Please go home now"?
This takes a bit of subtlety. You often use time cues or you make finalizing offers. For instance, you could offer one last non-alcoholic drink, like, "I'm just about to make a final pot of coffee. Would you like one for the road?" That signals the bar is closing, so to speak.
That's smooth.
Or you can just reference the time directly but blame an external factor. "Wow, look how late it is. I have to be up so early tomorrow." It signals the end of the night without putting it on the guest.
Okay, so they're at the door, ready to leave. We've done gratitude and reciprocity. What's the final piece?
The final piece is the caring closing. This is the phrase that gives a warm, safe end to the night.
Get home safe.
That's the one. It's the perfect closing note. Get home safe extends your hospitality beyond your front door. It shows you genuinely care about their well-being. It's personal, it's emotional, and it's comforting. Often you'll combine it with a look to the future, like, "Get home safe and let's do this again soon."
It really does complete the circle of hospitality, doesn't it? From that enthusiastic, "I am so glad you could come" at the beginning to the final, caring, "Get home safe" at the end. You've bookended the whole night with real linguistic care.
And the confidence a learner gets from mastering this whole sequence is just like, it's transformative. It lets them stop worrying about translating words in their head and start genuinely connecting with their friends.
So what does this all mean? It means you now have the full toolkit. You can choreograph an entire social evening in English with maximum guest comfort and minimum anxiety for yourself. The difference between just functional English and true social fluency is all about that intentionality.
Our deep dive today really showed that true social fluency in English comes from understanding the why behind the words. We went way beyond just definitions to look at the cultural and psychological power of phrases like "help yourself" or "make yourself at home," mastering the tone, the implication. That's the key to using these phrases to build real, comfortable relationships. I mean, critical thinking is so important in a world with so much information, and recognizing these little linguistic nuances is how you actually apply knowledge in a meaningful way.
Whether you're now feeling energized to go throw the perfect party, or maybe you just recognize these phrases as the key to being a really great guest, take a moment to reflect on how that intentional word choice can change the entire atmosphere of an event. Every word you choose really does dictate the level of comfort and formality and connection in a room.
The best English for hosting is simply the English that puts people at ease.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to consider. Based on this deep dive into English hospitality rules, especially the unspoken ones about shoes and drinks, reflect on how your own culture says welcome in your language. What rules are so deeply ingrained where you're from that you never even have to say them out loud? And how might understanding those differences enrich your next international interaction and let you navigate different social scripts with, well, with grace and fluency? Thank you so much for joining us for this incredibly practical deep dive into the essential English of genuine hospitality. We hope you feel ready to host or to travel with a new level of confidence and linguistic insight. We'll catch you next time for the next deep dive.